Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the place where we discuss all things usmnt y la seleccionmexicana. My name is Adrian. Joining me once again, my co-host Tocayo, Adrian. Adrian, what's good, man?
Nothing's good today, man. Sad night. Sad night. I'm ready to stand. I'm ready to stand firmly to defend what we said in a couple episodes back. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll get into that later tonight. Right now, we're going to cover some news coming out of the Mexican camp. They have kind of named their first, not their first, but they've named officially their head coach. Jaime El Jimmy Lozano has been named coach permanently on a permanent basis, coming from the interim head coach. And I think it's a good move. I mean, we both are fans of Jimmy Lozano.
yeah,
We acknowledge that he's had history with these players. A lot of these players respect him. A lot of these players have played for him before, and it's a coach that first of all, the first Mexican coach to coach eltri since Miguel Herrera did in the 2013 to 2015 cycle, and I mean he comes into the full time position after winning that Gold Cup 2023 against Panama 1-0. And according to some sources, the 44-year-old Jimmy Lozano, his connection to the players that he's worked with before and previously managed in the Olympic run in Tokyo when they got bronze, and in the youth teams was a big factor in why La Doña Fede decided to go with him, and he's loved by the national team. So that's a good start, right? I mean, a lot of these coaches, Argentinos or foreign coaches, struggle to really win over the fans and the actual national team players. So having that background already with that team, having already won on an interim basis a Gold Cup, and can only bode well for Jimmy. How excited are you about this permanent acquisition here?
that actually got me pumped today. I was really on a high note whenever I read that Jimmy Lozano was getting backed as the newest El Tri's coach. So that's something that is sustaining me still right now. I am stoked to see him come back and keep on coaching the lads. I just want to echo your comments. I think this is. I'm not gonna say it's a safe bet. I think it's a risky bet for El Tri, just because Jimmy Lozano isn't necessarily the most experienced coach that they could have hired. Uh, and and yeah, so El Tri could have definitely gone and find someone else with more experience, or spend a little more time trying to find the correct profile. But I think Jimmy Lozano is the correct profile if the intention is to build something in the long term, right? I think he's the kind of coach who is open to explore new ideas outside of what is known in Mexican football. He's not a reflection of the league in any way. Mexican league, it's a league known for not being necessarily revolutionary or trendy on implementing new techniques and tactics on the game. But Jimmy Lozano is completely the opposite of that, right? Even when he was coaching Querétaro Necaxa, he was going out of, thinking out of the box, going out of his way to implement new ways of training, different lineups, and how to better utilize his strengths of the team, the strengths of his team. Sorry. So yeah, I think it's a smart choice. I think again it's a risky one. I really hope that all Doña Fede and sus secuaces are patient with Jimmy Lozano, because I know that we're coming off from a high note on Gold Cup, but it's the Gold Cup, right? And this is going to be a tough 3 years before we ramp up for 2026, because there's no qualification matches for Mexico. It's going to be difficult for them to find good competition to have FIFA friendlies whenever the qualifying matches are scheduled. So best wishes for Jimmy Lozano. We're gonna be cheering for him here at PPG, and we really hope that he continues to rock El Tri's coach seat, as with bangers on every single match.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I kind of disagree with. We don't disagree a lot on here. We tend to have pretty similar thoughts when it comes to football and Mexican football. But you said it's a high risk. I think it's a low risk, high reward. Low risk in that Doña Fede can, and at any point, as soon as it goes sour for Jimmy, fire him and probably get the guy that they wanted, an Argentine or a foreigner that they always want, somebody that they'll splash out the big bucks for. And then they could say, you know, well, we did what the Mexican fans wanted. We gave a Mexican a chance. He failed. Thank you, Jimmy. You got us the Gold Cup, and we gave you a chance. But if Jimmy does great and does well, I mean, they'll look like geniuses. Oh, we hired a Mexican coach. He's doing fantastic. We gave him a chance. You know, he did well. He won the Gold Cup. He's doing well in the Copa America. You know, for example, it has a tendency. It has a chance to become really high reward for Doña Fede, the higher ups, and for Jimmy. For Jamie, it's probably high risk just because this is the one chance he'll get with Eltri, and he's still kind of a new coach. But I think it's for the overall program, it's a low risk, very high potential reward for la selección nacional there.
Yeah, I see your point, and I totally agree on, you know, this is have kind of a high reward in any situation. The my main reason why I call it high risk for Doña Fede is because they can definitely find someone with more experience, right? I think in paper, bringing a coach that is, you know, more seasoned, that has, I guess, experience dealing with talent, experience dealing with a young locker room, and as well as, you know, being well versed on different I guess different footballs or styles around the world, seems to be in paper a safer option for the three. Like, for example, if they were bringing, I don't know, Lopetegui or someone amongst, you know, those names, right? I think everyone would have said, well, he's a great coach. This is kind of a safe bet. They're doing it, you know, they're taking the right path. And if it so happens that it fails, I wouldn't necessarily think that, you know, of course, all the punts are going to say, well, he's not a Mexican, he doesn't really understand Mexican football, which is pretty much always the argument whenever they bring in a foreign coach, with the exception of the ones that came from Liga MX. But on the other side is, if everything goes south with Jimmy, it's still going to be that's what you get for hiring a young coach, right? That's what you get for hiring someone who doesn't have any experience. So that's why I name it as a high risk. But I think overall, in every single perspective, whether if it's Jimmy's perspective, El Tri perspective, the player's perspective, the fans' perspective, I think it's always a high return or high potential for anyone, because if everything goes well and he's able to perform and carry on with El Tri, I think we all going to be celebrating that, or actually just cheering that, hey, Doña Fede for once did something right.
Right. Yeah, man. Definitely potential for good things to come from Jimmy. Just a quick recap of you know, who Jaime Jimmy Lozano is as a player. He's a legendary Liga MX player. Spent time with Pumas, Celaya, Tigres, Cruzazul, Morelia, and played with El Tri from 2000 2007. He's coached the Querétaro and Pumas Academy. Then he coached the Querétaro senior squad, Mexico U23, and Necaxa. Accolades as coach include Supercopa de MX 2017 with Querétaro, Pan American bronze medal 2019 with La Selección U23, Olympic gold medal in Tokyo 2020 with La Selección, and the Gold Cup 2023. So definitely someone that has history with La Selección, history with Liga MX, yep. And plenty of accolades as a coach and as a player. So you know, fans of this move, and wish Jimmy all the luck in the world, man. It's gonna be he'll need it, but if he does well, he'll definitely become a fan favorite if he isn't so already.
Yep.
Let's get into the second half of this episode. The reason for your attitude this afternoon, for your demise and in your morale. You started off good when you read that. When we all started off well when we read that Jimmy Lozano notice, but now the round of 16 Leagues Cup has ended, and a lot of shocking surprises here, to say the least. But before we get into the round of 16, let's kind of see how we got here. Let's cover round of 32. In the round of 32, LAFC demolished FC Juarez 7-1. Everybody saw that coming. León was winning against Real Salt Lake 1-0 at the half, then Real Salt Lake completely turned it around 1-3-1. Tigres of Vancouver tied 1-1, ended up going to penalty with Tigres 1. Monterrey handled Portland 1-0. Columbus Crew and Minnesota tied at 3-3 in regulation. Minnesota ultimately winning in penalties. Toluca dismantled Sporting Kansas City 4-1. Chicago lost 1-0 to America. Cincinnati and Nashville tied 1-1, ultimately Nashville prevailing in penalties. Philly and DC tied 0-0, ultimately Philly passing on penalties. New York Red Bull beat their rival New York City FC 1-0. Pumas lost to Querétaro, who's been the Cenicienta,
The
the
Cinderella,
Cinderella
yeah.
story of
Dude,
this
come-
League's Cup, winning 1-0 against Pumas. Atlas and New England tied 2-2, with ultimately New England winning in penalties. Mazatlan lost to Dallas 2-1. Miami beat Orlando 3-1. Cruzazul and Charlotte tied 0-0. Ultimately, Cruzazul losing Charlotte in penalties. And Houston and Pachuca went to penalties, with Pachuca ultimately one and done in the league, losing on penalties to Houston Dynamo, and Dynamo advancing. Um, but before we go to round of 32, round of 16, any shockers from those for you, man? You know,
um,
I think the big Mexican teams that we predicted to win won, and with maybe Pachuca being the one that could really let us down, Cruz Azul maybe as well. But other than that, any surprises for you?
for me, Leon, I wasn't expecting
Mm.
Leon to lose 3-1 against Real Salt Lake City. I thought, by no means, I don't think it was going to be an easy match for Leon, but I wasn't expecting them not moving on from this stage. Uh, Pachuca is also, a shocker, but at least for me, it wasn't as big of a shock as it was Leon, because I know Pachuca, they have essentially dismantled that team for the last year and a half. They have sold pretty much all the players. I think there's only a few ones remaining from that championship in 2022, um, which is Facundo Cabral and Roberto de la Rosa, Eric Sanchez, but Luis Sanchez is gone. Nico Ibanez is gone. They also just recently fired Ustari, who used to be the number one keeper. So that team is long gone, and it's just it's going to be like a couple of years of restructuring until they find new Mexican talent from their academy, and then bring in some other interesting foreign players. But I wasn't expecting anything from Cruz Azul. I didn't think it was going to be an easy match by any way, but I it was expected for me. I think it was going to be a close match, which it was, and I'm happy that Tuca is out. So yeah, I'm not surprised on there. But Leon, yeah, it has to be Leon for me. They just completely got uh, outplayed on those last minutes.
It was not the Leon that we saw that won the
Yeah.
Conca Champions at
Hmm.
all. You know, LAFC, we called it at the beginning of the tournament. They're probably the best built all around MLS team,
Yeah.
especially for tournament plays like this. And they're showing it, man. They dismantled Juarez. Of course, Juarez isn't the greatest Mexican team, but 7-1 was kind of something to note there.
It was rough.
Yeah, it was definitely rough. As far as there was a lot of what I took from the round of 32, a lot of draws that ultimately went to penalties between Liga MX and MLS team New England and Atlas. You had Tigres and Vancouver. You had, I guess,
Cruz Azul,
Cruz Azul, yeah,
Pachuca.
Pachuca, Houston, and then even between MLS and MLS teams, we saw Cincinnati and Nashville tie. Saw Philly and DC. So very close games all around, except for the outlier that is the LAFC match, and I guess Toluca and Sporting Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
But I think ultimately the teams that won, it was fair. The teams that won deserved to win, and the teams that got knocked out deserve to get knocked out by their play. I mean, Leon, how are you going to lose that badly when you were up 1-0 as the
Against Real
current
Salt Lake
champion?
City, man. Come on, dude.
They were doing good, man, up until today, round of 16. Let's get into round of 16, starting with that Real Salt Lake match. LAFC continues their nonstop scoring, man. This time holding on a clean sheet, winning
Mhm.
4-0 against Real Salt Lake. Philly and Red Bulls tied 1-1, with Philly ultimately passing on penalties. Querétaro and New England 1-1. Querétaro ultimately advancing in penalties. Um, Dallas and Miami, a game that we covered in our previous episode because of the lack of defense in that game and just
Hmm.
the attacking prowess shown by both teams. But a game that ended 4-4, two Leo Messi goals, and ultimately Miami winning in penalties. Charlotte beating Houston 2-1. As a Houston fan, that was, I mean,
Pathetic.
yeah, I haven't kept up with Houston as I used to years ago, but I watched this game and God, they had 10 minutes to go to win it, and two huge mistakes that ultimately ended up costing them. Um, Clubamerica in Nashville, we'll get into that one, but it ended up with Nashville winning at penalties. Toluca in Minnesota, Minnesota again winning penalties after a 2-2 match. And then the one we just finished watching, Tigres ended up losing 1-0 to their arch rival Rayados de Monterrey, and which ultimately Monterrey play LAFC in the quarterfinals. So that sets up LAFC Monterrey, Philly Querétaro, Miami, Charlotte, and Nashville, Minnesota. Two Liga MX teams remaining and six MLS teams remaining. Let's talk first before we really get into the controversy or the really stressful games that we saw this evening. Let's go through Tigres and Monterrey. Not that that one wasn't stressful, but I don't think it came down to uh, having to go into penalties like the Luca Minnesota and America and Nashville, and having lost the way they did. I think was more um, hurtful for those fan bases than, granted, the penalty maybe wasn't a penalty. Monterrey
Yeah.
Tigres, and I mean, I don't think many Tigres or Monterrey fans take this cup too seriously, but ultimately Tigres lost 1-0 in a very even but boring game. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a I'm not well. I don't know if it was a tough match to follow or to watch. Because I think if you're a football fan, you can appreciate the level. I guess the the level at what both teams were playing. They pretty much counter each other pretty significantly. There wasn't necessarily like a dominant team on the pitch, but nonetheless it was a 0-0. I think it was expected. Both teams came to this match with a string of some players on the edge or verge of getting injured or with injuries already, like Berterame and El Búfalo Aguirre. On the Tigres side, Diego Reyes was out. Samir Caetano was a question for this match as well. So I think both of these showed up with signs of struggle on having a very short period of preseason and then having to essentially play every 2 3 days uh, on different time zones, on different stadiums, on different pitches. And I think that showed up today. Where, for example, if you look at Jesus Angulo, he had to be subbed off because he was cramping badly almost at the end of the match. Um, so yeah, it was, needless to say, a kind of a slow match until it picked up at the very end. But man, one thing for sure before we get into all the controversies, the refereeing on this tournament has been complete trash, man.
It's been
Complete and utter
horrible,
trash. Yeah.
horrible. Yeah,
Hmm. And,
I
and
agree.
today, this match was just an example on how it was horrible completely. Like calls that shouldn't be called out. That last penalty to me, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Tigres fan. A lot of people are going to discredit me because of that, but I honestly don't think it was a penalty, right? It was I guess a very common regular play on a soccer match where you have the striker holding the ball, the defender comes along, he's running too fast, they both collide, and
Legs
as
get
one of them,
tangled.
exactly, as they
Yeah.
tangle up, as one of them is falling down, of course, feet are gonna fly everywhere, and someone's gonna get hit. But that doesn't mean that it went with the intention of fouling the player. Now you get this freaking call on the 90th, minute, and now it's all downhill for Tigres. Um, and so I don't know, man. It's even with the Nashville against Club America, that repeat penalty that had to do. I think it was just either they have to make up their minds. Either they follow the rules to the line, right, specifically as how it's written on the freaking booklet, or they just decide to wing it. And they don't seem to go either way. They either are very strict on some things, and they are loose and vague on other things. And also, I guess it depends on which team they're refereeing, right? And yes, I mean Inter de Miami.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen from this tournament is that two consistencies. Inter de Miami hits a lot of favorable calls, and the refereeing is very random and sporadic. That I think we could agree that Malagon was maybe off his line in that America game,
Hmm.
but you have to be. He already blown the whistle. You had already kind of stopped the match. The match had ended. It's similar to what happened in the World Cup with France against who was it? Tunisia, when
Hmm.
they had scored already after the whistle had blown.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so it's like you have to. I don't like how the refs are handling all this.
No.
They're handling it like very rookie refs. Yeah, that he was above the line. You had to retake that penalty, but you waited like 5 to 7 minutes to call it back, and you just you just cause a lot of unnecessary controversy, right?
Hmm.
Same with the Monterrey Tigres game. Refing was horrible there, and at the end, not only did he call a soft foul, which okay, Monterrey fans are going to say it was a penalty. Tigres fans are probably going to say it's not. Neutrals can go either way. I feel it was a either way penalty.
Yeah.
It was definitely a soft penalty, but I could see it going either way. But then he gave that. He lost control of uh, the players. There was fights at the end there, and it just it's gotten really to the point where they just lose control of the whole situation. And with Inter Miami, like that match against Orlando in the round of 32, where Messi fouled one of the Orlando midfielders, didn't get called against him, which would have been his second yellow card,
Yeah.
and then he gets soft fouled, and they call it against Orlando. It's like I don't know, very inconsistent refing. And you brought up a good point early on in your monologue there that we saw a lot of Liga MX teams fall in the round of 16, and I don't want to make excuses for Liga MX, but we've seen a lot of interviews with coaches, with players saying that all this traveling, time zone changes, city changes, playing on turf, playing on regular grass, you know, does take your toll on you, right?
Hmm.
The MLS teams don't have to deal with that. A lot of teams have played exclusively at home.
Yes.
It's all Liga MX teams that are traveling, and that does affect you. I'd really really like to see. I know we can't get this because concacaf starts when MLS kind of in preseason, so even that's not fair. I would love to see a tournament where both leagues are in season and they play home and away in Mexico or in the USA or Canada, and really have a fair tournament, right? With both atmospheres, both everybody travels equally, and I think we'd see a more results more akin to what we predict,
Yeah.
because a lot of these results didn't go the way we predicted at all, and penalties. It's a
I don't
it's
think it's a good reflection of Liga MX in any way. I don't think it's a good reflection on any of the Liga MX teams whatsoever. Now, I know some PPG fans are going to say, well, that's because you like Liga MX, right? So you're biased, but I'm not. I'm just stating some facts out there, which is the Leagues Cup hasn't been beneficial for Liga MX in any way whatsoever. I know that every single match pays out and gives each team money depending on the result and how they move on to the next stage, but it has been more detrimental to Liga MX teams than MLS, and that's just a fact. There's nothing. There's no lie behind it. I'm not being biased here. I'm just stating the truth, which is Leagues Cup isn't in the best interest of Liga MX. It's in the best interest of MLS and Zoom on making football or soccer a business here in the states. Um, I We have yet to see how all the Mexican teams are going to come back and continue with the domestic league, right? To see
yeah,
how
it's
this
gonna be a
tournament.
mess.
Yeah, exactly. Take Monterrey. They lost two big strikers. One of them is out for 6 months. in the name of Hernan Berterame. So it's I don't know, man. It hasn't bode well for Liga MX in any way. And then the fact that we have Querétaro on the quarterfinals and they are the gallo, literally, of Liga MX, it's funny and disillusional at the same time. Um, but I do want to say this is I stand on our take that Leagues Cup is still exposing MLS teams on their defending, because even though we have 6 teams of MLS moving on to the next round and only 2 Liga MX teams moving on to the next round, if you look at every single match, uh, for example, this one LAFC against Real Salt Lake is 4-0. LAFC was constantly on the offensive, very poor defending from RSL, right? If you look at Toluca against Minnesota, same thing with Club America against Nashville. Poor defending from both MLS teams. That's why Toluca was able to come back and almost make the full comeback. And then Club America was so close on winning that match against Nashville because of the terrible defending that MLS has. If you look at Dallas against Miami, it's a 4-4 game where both defenses were complete and utter trash. If there's anything that we learn from that match between Dallas and Miami, is that yes, Miami relies heavily on Messi, but when they get attacked with a control ball and a fast pace, they suffer significantly, and that's something that is common on every single MLS team. Take Charlotte against Houston. Two horrible plays from the defenders. If they had better defenders, that shouldn't happen, and Houston would have moved on to the next stage. So I stand with our take, dude. Come at me, fight me. I still think Liga MX is better than MLS.
Yeah, big words, man. And I think what we said before, that LAFC is probably the big team that can compete consistently with the big dogs of Liga MX is still true. I think they're a
Mm-hmm.
team that has the more rounded, best defense and offense, and it shows. They're big dogs. I think that are left in this cup now that all the pretty much, well, them and Monterrey, but Monterrey's kind of handicapped now,
Yeah,
and
it is.
they see each other in the round of 8, so that'll be a great game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, very poor defending in the round of 16. I agree with you. Toluca or Minnesota, like we said, like you said, and like we said in our previous video, that did have some controversy. MLS teams start amazingly strong. First
Mm-hmm.
60, 70 minutes, attack, 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 and it works in MLS because, like we said, below average defending. Right, that overwhelmed Toluca 2-0. Minnesota was winning 2-0. Then they push, take their foot off the gas, and Toluca's able to expose their weaker defense there in the last 20, 30 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what we consistently see between MLS squads. So hopefully, we mentioned in a previous episode, the salary cap is removed and MLS can spread out their finances and get all around quality throughout
Yeah.
their squads. Um, Quick recap here or I guess preview for the last 8 here. Who do you see going through between LAFC and Monterrey?
I think it's going to be LAFC. I think Monterrey severely handicapped. What we saw today is just an example of how challenging it's going to be for them to move on. They don't have a very depth bench, and
Yeah.
that showed today.
Okay, Nashville, Minnesota.
I'm gonna stick with Minnesota.
Okay, Miami, Charlotte.
I mean, dude, it's gonna be Miami. I mean,
Yeah, sorry. And Querétaro and Philly.
as much as I would like to see Querétaro, play against Miami, I think
Oh
Phil is
man,
gonna take it.
yeah, that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
So you're predicting no Liga MX team for
No,
the last
I
four?
don't. I don't think any of the Liga MX are gonna move on.
Well, okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Liga MX round of 8 or quarterfinals later this week, and we'll be here for it to give our reactions to those matches. Hopefully, matches less prone to referee involvement. So maybe we could watch some decent matches here in round of 8.
Yeah.
Adrian, man, it's been a pleasure with you again, brother. As we disconnect here for the night, man, where can the listeners find us?
Dude, they can always find us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. You can also find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast on. Last but not least, you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Puro Pinche Gol. We post stuff every now and then.
Yeah, make sure to follow us and let us know in the comments if we're full of shit. If you don't agree with us, if if you think the refing has somehow in your eyes been good, or if you think the gap between MLS and Liga MX is a lot closer than Adrian thinks it is, we definitely like to interact with you guys in the comments. And yeah, I mean it's fun interacting with you guys, seeing you guys' opinion and
Yeah.
how they compare or differ, to ours, and definitely fun times. Adrian, man, been another good one with you, brother. See you in the next one.
Take it easy, my friend. Bye.
See you, bro. Bye.